everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of the Lost One podcast. Joining me again, we have Shoshima.
Sup, nerds?
And our usual disembodied voice, who is very, very disappointed in me personally, SamuraiNoodlez.
I feel like he's normally more disappointed in me.
I mean, we can fight over that.
I will.
Okay, so we'll play some Marvel vs. Capcom?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see who's better.
Guys, this is supposed to be my intro, jeez. Dang, just take it over.
You know,
you're disappointed in us taking over your intro.
We also just had a conversation about how we keep stepping on him, so we just figured we keep it going.
I know, right?
Oh, man.
Anyway, we're done. Want to introduce yourself?
No, I think you guys have introduced me very well. I'm very disappointed in both of you.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. All right, so everybody, welcome. If you're wondering why we're dressed in exactly the same outfits as last time, we are literally recording these back to back. I think I talked about it in the second episode. We attempted to record episode 2 a week ago, and basically we lost power. There was a fire that blew out a transformer, and
yeah, there was no basically. All the lights turned off.
Yeah, we lost everything, and it corrupted the file. So we're trying to make up for a little lost time here. We're recording 2 episodes tonight. The previous episode where we discussed Iron Man, the MCU, and surprisingly very little about the movie. We talked a lot about stuff related to the movie, the MCU as a whole.
I feel like the history of the movies, the more crazy, or, you know, with hindsight looking at it, yeah, more interesting concept.
I agree.
Especially us not being big film buffs or movie critics.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Samurai, you feel the same way, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Yeah, so we were kind of all in agreement on that. But today, I wanted to kind of shift gears a little bit. The plan for the MCU is to kind of do like every other recording. We'll probably talk about an MCU film, or at least the state of the MCU, the character, that sort of thing, just like we did with Iron Man. But today, I kind of want to switch to other topics, just so we don't bore the audience of Marvel and comic book fans. You know,
well, if we don't want the audience to be bored, they should just leave.
Yeah, I mean that's probably true. But hey, come on, you're not supposed to tell them that.
Oh.
Hey, well, no, come back. Listen.
Yeah,
listen
don't listen to him. Don't listen to him. Please come back, watch, like, subscribe, tell your friends.
Yeah, click
please.
the bell so you can get notified.
I don't have very many friends, so please tell them for me.
Hi, it's just me. That's why I'm the only one on the casting couch.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's why we only have a disembodied voice for Samurai.
He doesn't even like us enough to be here.
Yeah, exactly. Not ignoring the fact that he's like 60 miles away, but
well, yeah, of course I'm gonna ignore that fact.
Yeah, well, you know, I have to point it out. We have to tell, not show, all the time. Anyway, but yeah. So today we're going to try to mix things up. This will still largely be like a nerd culture podcast. So like, if nerd culture isn't your thing, like, hey, totally understand. But that's what this is going to be about. And I don't really think you get much more nerdy than our topic we've chosen for today, which is going to be tabletop role-playing games.
Yeah, it's pretty nerdy.
Yeah.
I actually had a conversation about that at work today.
Oh, yeah, really?
Yeah, I saw a D20 on a car, like the sticker.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this nerd has a Dungeons and Dragons sticker on their car. But the problem is I'm such a nerd, I know what that sticker means.
Yeah, there you go. See, you just outed yourself. Hey, Samurai, what's that favorite line you always like to toss?
What? No.
He has a lot of favorite lines.
Well, that one, but I was thinking, congratulations, you played yourself.
What? That's not me.
No, but you say it all the time.
I say a lot of meme-worthy stuff all the time.
That you do.
Oh, crap.
So you heard it here first, everybody.
Yeah.
SamuraiNoodlez, resident meme lord.
Until we get Wiggin.
Yeah, until we can see.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, jeez. No, he outclasses me.
Yeah, he does.
That's why you're it until now.
Yeah. We came into the meme culture, but Wiggins was born in it, molded by it.
I was born in the meme culture.
Yes. So anyway, yeah, tabletop RPGs. So, for those that don't know, I am a big fan of tabletop RPGs. I love Dungeons and Dragons in particular, but I started actually with GURPS way back when. For the record, good system, not one I would recommend for your first. I just want to throw that out there. I played some of the Fate games, Powered by Apocalypse, for those who don't know, and Yeah. I've played quite a few. I can't really say I'm a master of very many outside of Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons is the one I probably spend most of my time. For those that don't know, I've basically been DMing on and off for the better part of like 13 years. I pretty much got my start in 3.5 and didn't really care for 3.5, moved over to 4th edition and really found kind of like my game. So yes, I'm going to publicly declare this. 4th edition is my favorite edition of Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm not going to hate on
Gasp.
this is not edition wars, but Samurai's reaction is the usual reaction I get when I talk about 4th edition, because this is a fact. 4th edition is one of the worst selling, if not the worst selling version of Dungeons and Dragons in history. It has since, I think, gotten a lot more popular in hindsight, but there's a whole story behind that I'll probably dive into at some point on this podcast. But yes, I really enjoy 4th edition. And my reasoning is very simple. Dungeons and Dragons, at its core, as a TTRPG, is a glorified combat simulator. It's what it always has been, and it's what it pretty much always will be. Although I think with 5th edition, they are taking some strides to kind of stretch out into more stuff. Inspiration is a mechanic that jumps out at me. But 4th edition, in my opinion, does combat better than any other version of Dungeons and Dragons. It makes all the classes feel important. It makes them all feel useful. At least the initial base stuff. It gets a little crazy when you start introducing all the supplemental things that came later. But overall, 4th edition, in my opinion, is the best at what Dungeons and Dragons is best at. That's not a knock on 5th edition. My issue with 5th edition is that it went back to a lot of stuff that 4th edition fixed. And I feel that if 5th edition had built more on 4th edition, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more. But again, that's just my opinion. That's not a statement of fact. 5th edition is the one I recommend to all new players. If you've never played Dungeons and Dragons before, start with 5th edition. I promise you, it will be way easier than trying to start with any other edition of Dungeons and Dragons. So, with that being said, that's kind of a brief history of my experience. Shoshima, what's your experience with tabletop RPGs?
Well, I started in high school with you because we're both nerds.
What?
But we played GURPS, which I believe is a ROLL playing game.
It is ROLE.
No, I know that. That was a joke to our high school.
Oh, I know.
Yes.
But they don't know that.
But you know that.
I do. Long story short, the role-playing club spelled roll, ROLL.
Yeah, when we were doing the, with the big, like, what's the proper term? Not the pep rally, but, like,
It was
signing up for clubs.
Basically, during our lunch period, they would have all the clubs come out,
yeah.
and then you could sign up and join a club at the start of the year.
Yeah, and whoever decided to make the poster, because I think it was a teacher that wrote it, right? Or
Probably.
like some adult.
Yeah.
Spelled it ROLL.
Yeah.
So we tried to find bread and throw it at each other, but we didn't have very much success with that.
No, we didn't.
But yeah, we played some of that. We played some GURPS outside of, like after high school.
Yeah.
I remember playing some in my apartment.
Haseo fell asleep during those sessions.
Every
time.
Pretty much every time. I remember making a badass archer that just headshotted everything multiple times.
That was pretty great.
I pretty much broke that game with
Yeah.
that character. And then we've been playing a lot of D&D together recently.
Yeah, it's weird, right? I pretty much run like every game he plays in. So
No, there's no pretty much.
Yeah, it just
It is.
I'm trying to establish
It's just a
some
fact.
plausible deniability here, but no, it's literally every game. I run every game he plays in. Samurai, how about you?
All right, so with tabletops, I had an interest in it in high school. Never actually played, but watched a lot of people play it. I thought it was pretty cool, but didn't really get a chance to. I shouldn't say didn't get a chance. Didn't join in until a little bit after high school, where I partook in a few games. It didn't really last too long. Let's hop about a decade later, right?
Roughly.
And
We're older than we can say a decade later.
oh, jeez, God,
Are we just gonna-
aged us?
Are we just going to remind ourselves how old we are now?
Well,
Which
I'm
we're
about to
not
be
even that
30
old.
this year, by the way. I'm getting pretty old.
Yeah, no, I mean 30's not that old.
Says the one that's turning 31 soon.
Yeah, Samurai is turning 32 this year. What's your point?
Conveniently on the same day as me.
Yeah, it's really weird how that works. So you guys share a birthday and you're both my best friends. It's a bit strange.
I know.
So anyway, sorry,
Right.
Samurai, please continue.
Shenzo just goes around saying, "Hi, friend. What's your birthday?" Oh, it's not 10/16. Can't be friends.
So I mentioned at the end of the last episode that I didn't have many friends. Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, because it has to be anyone born on October 16th. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter the year.
Yeah.
It's that date.
Anyway, I'm sorry, Samurai. Please continue.
Yeah, no, I ended up playing with you guys for what was actually one of my most consistent games, but that was only after watching Critical Role, which meshed with me very well because I was basically a theater kid without being in theater. I love the idea of acting. Just the fact of getting into a character is actually really cool with me. So
Samurai is also a huge voice acting nerd.
yeah, but I mean, what is voice acting other than just actual acting?
It is acting, and anyone who says otherwise has never tried it.
Exactly. Dude, oh my god, that goes into a whole different story.
We'll cover a voice acting and an acting topic at a future podcast for sure.
Yeah, but yeah, no, it was basically just being theater without actually having to be in theater, and that's what really drew me into it.
Yeah, so as you can probably tell, I'm kind of the linchpin of both of their experiences.
Would you say you're the Iron Man of our D&D playing?
I mean, I do have the goatee.
All right, you heard it here, folks.
Just throwing out there. I'm not going to say that I'm Iron Man. Because I'm not. But
we've never seen him and Iron Man in the same room together.
That is also true, yes. Anyway, I don't really know where to go from that. But yeah.
What a good way to have a god complex.
What are you talking about? I don't have the body of a god. That's you.
Hey,
unfortunately,
that god is Buddha.
You guys said that at the exact same time. That was perfect. I teed that one up beautifully.
Oh.
You're welcome. Because you guys had said I had a god complex, so you know.
Mm-hmm.
No, but no. The thing is, though, is yeah, I kind of dragged both of these guys in. I don't want to say drag; they both came willingly, but I did ask, and you know, my inspiration. I've talked about this a lot on stream, twitch.tv/ShenzoTheLost, by the way. And you know, my inspiration for a lot of my D&D stuff comes from Critical Hit, which is a podcast from Major Spoilers. So they ran a 4th edition campaign for basically 10 years. I think it was like 9 years or something like that. Like, their game was going longer than 4th edition was actually, like, relevant. And Rodrigo Lopez was the dungeon master. And a lot of, like, my style came from him, because when I initially tried to DM, especially like when we were in high school and in college, I'm gonna be honest, it didn't go well. I didn't really know what I was doing. I wasn't really familiar like with my own style, and Rodrigo. Well, I realized I will never be Rodrigo Lopez, right? And I didn't want to be, but he provided me kind of this foundation of like, this is how to run a game. And it was really the first time that I had really ever seen someone who knew what they were doing. The only other really experienced dungeon master that I played with was our friend Michael. And Mike is actually the one who I think ran our initial 3.5 games. Isn't that right, Samurai?
Yep, that's the one that I had on and off games with.
Yeah, and you know, so Mike in many ways was the one who really gave me my first practical experience, but as Samurai kind of said, that was very on and off. I think I only played like maybe once or twice with that group. But
dude, same here.
Yeah, but it was fun, and I'm very grateful to this day for that introduction, because you know, we started off with GURPS and none of us really knew what we were doing with GURPS. So for those who are not familiar with GURPS is a Steven Jackson production, basically product, and it is you might know Steven Jackson games from like Munchkin. That's kind of like his big title, is the Munchkin games. and all the
What is it? General Universal Role Playing.
generic universal role playing system. That's what GURPS stands for. And basically, the appeal of GURPS is that you only need 3 dice, and that's 3d6s, which is the most standard dice, so it's the easiest to find. You could find them like literally in any shop before D&D became big.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this was pre-5th edition, where 5th edition in many ways I think made Dungeons & Dragons more mainstream. It allowed for the more quote-unquote casual viewer, kind of like what we talked about with like Iron Man and the MCU in the last episode. It was kind of like the easier gateway into Dungeons & Dragons because of just the way 5th edition was written. Mm-hmm. And it has been very successful at that. But back in these days, it was like you had to go to like a specialized like game shop in order to find like the different like D20s, D8s, D10s, D12s. They weren't quite as readily available, at least not to, a 14-year-old at the time.
Well, yeah, back then Amazon wasn't a thing.
Yeah, well, Amazon was a thing, but it wasn't...
Not for dice.
Yeah, not at the way it is now, right? But, it was like, I bought my first GURPS book, which I still have, by the way, at Barnes & Noble. So that should kind of tell you, like, we didn't have, like, a dedicated game store that I went to at the time. Mm-hmm. I had to go to Barnes & Noble to find my stuff. And, basically, with GURPS, the appeal is it's generic. It has rules in it to basically start at like any era, any technology era, ranging from like beating each other with like wooden clubs to like high tech sci-fi with like
prehistoric
power armor and massive like battleships. And I'm not talking about like sea battleships, like space battleships, like out of StarCraft. And the appeal of it was all you needed were 3 die. You just roll 3d6s for every roll. Every skill, every combat, damage, all of that was all done with 3d6s. So, on the one hand, it's very simple, but on the other hand, it provides almost no structure. Mm-hmm. So for someone who's just jumping in, it doesn't really give you a really good way of, like, power levels, which was a problem because they did, like, a point system where you would, like, assign, like, 250 points, and then you would pick advantages and disadvantages, and you had to remember what all of them were, and basically it became an information dump. Mm-hmm. Like, your character sheet was a huge information dump.
Yeah, because then you could just get a whole bunch of disadvantages to make yourself stronger.
Yeah.
And then if the GM isn't paying attention, you don't have to roleplay the disadvantages.
Exactly. So it was really, really tough of a system for us to jump in first. I think out of all of us, I think Ian was the one who really got it down the best.
I remember I don't think I played much with Ian. I know I played with Ander.
Yeah, Ian I think got really into it at one point, mm-hmm. and Ander also did as well. But basically,
Ander gets really into everything.
He does. He really hyper focuses on something, and then he loses interest and moves on to the next thing. That's kind of his MO.
His shtick.
But so GURPS was very difficult for someone, for a 14-year-old kid who didn't really understand role playing before, but it interested me. I was captured by the idea that you could be anyone and anywhere. And the premise of GURPS was literally a multiverse. Mm-hmm. Infinite worlds. And their rules were very simple. Each kind of like, quote-unquote, universe was adjacent to another, and they were numbered. So, like, for example, Universe 1 was adjacent to Universe 2. Universe 2 is adjacent to 1 and 3. And the rules were simple, is that you could move over one universe relatively easy, 2 with difficulty, and anything above that was impossible. So if you had a home world in, like, say, Universe 6, you could reach anywhere from Universe 4 to Universe 8, but you couldn't reach any below that, 3, 2, or 1, and you couldn't reach any above that, 9 and above.
Unless you asked Zeno-sama, right?
No. Not even then. Like, that was specifically the rules for their built-in campaign. So I was fascinated by that. Again, comic book nerd, multiverses are kind of my thing. I like it. But, yeah, right? I know. Shocker. Shenzo's Confession. Shenzo Tells All. That's going to be the title of this video. Not really.
But you told
but just the... Preaching. I never played GURPS, so that's kind of... What?
Mm-hmm.
I've played GURPS and I don't remember that being a thing.
Yeah, no, I like I said, I still have both GURPS books. Like, legitimately, I can like walk you through the basic setting.
Oh
But
no, we believe you.
yeah, it was essentially multiverse, and that was the only two rules: is that you like a planet of sufficient technology in their technology scale could potentially jump to different multiverses, but they couldn't go more than two.
Yeah, I don't think we ever got far enough to really worry about that.
No, we never did. But and of course you could run games that never even worried about the multiverse, but you know, which is often what we did. But the point being is that that's what caught my attention to this system. I didn't understand any of it. I understand it a lot better now, but you know, that's what 17 years later.
God,
So
old.
yeah, but anyway, so as I mentioned, I was then introduced Dungeons and Dragons, which 3.5 was the dominant at the time. This was right before 4th edition came out. I want to say this was like 2007 or so. Does that sound about right, Samurai?
That's the thing. I was very general in it so much. I didn't know what version was what.
Yeah. So the one we played with Mike was 3.5 for sure.
Was it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I wasn't really introduced to 4th edition until college. I was still running. I was running 3.5 in college. And for those that don't know, 3.5 was prior to 5th edition, the most popular version of Dungeons and Dragons. 3.5 forms the basis of rules for Pathfinder, which is ironically now Dungeons and Dragons' like main competitor in the role playing space. But yeah, basically Pathfinder was built on Dungeons and Dragons 3.5 rules. Pathfinder 2, I think, has made some modifications, but I don't know enough about it to comment. And in a lot of ways, Pathfinder actually improved on the 3.5. They fixed a lot of stuff. They basically, I don't want to say perfected, but they got pretty damn close. Pathfinder is a super solid system if you've never played. Highly recommend trying it out. But 3.5 had a lot of problems. And among those problems were class imbalances were a big one. Basically, any type of martial class, so like the fighter, the rogue, the ranger, not great. They would basically be useful for probably the first like couple levels, and then they would just fall off. And magic users and divine classes like clerics, they got to do some pretty crazy shit as they leveled up.
Yeah, they started off weaker, right?
Yeah, they started off weaker, but like once you got past like level like 4 or 5, they just start that like the gap between the physical classes just got higher and higher and higher. And basically, like, because I used to love playing Rangers. Ranger is one of my favorite classes in Dungeons and Dragons. And I'll just tell you that a Ranger is hit or miss. You're either going to kill everything, or you're not going to do shit. And that was the case for a lot of the physical classes. Whereas, like, you with the Wizard, this was a pretty common thing, but, like, there's a combination you can take where you can summon any mammal in the game. Like, summon mammal. You want to know what Dungeons and Dragons has?
Bears?
No, not big black bears.
Whales?
Whales. They have a whale that is basically the size of like a city. This is canon. So in one of our campaigns, I swear to God, this actually happened. We were going into the final fight, and the wizard was like, I'm just going to summon this giant whale directly over the big bad's army. And you take D, however much, I don't remember what the math was, but like, he summoned it like X height, so it was like fall damage, plus the size of the whale. And in short, he one-shotted like the entire enemy army, and we ended the campaign on like, oh, I guess that's it.
Yeah, let me just summon this giant-ass whale.
We killed the big bad. Like, the wizard killed the big bad in one turn. None of us even got to do anything. It was like, okay.
Seems legit.
Yeah, and that's the type of crazy stuff you could do in 3.5, especially as you got into the later levels.
Dude, I got away with so much shit.
Yeah, I mean, I specifically remember your entrance being flying in from the sky and missing and leaving a crater in the ground. Dungeons and Dragons 3.5 let you do a lot of really crazy stuff, which is fun, but in the right hands, it can get abused. I think that's the best way to put it.
I remember picking one of the most, technically what seemed like one of the most useless powers I got to create water, and I think it was like only a gallon.
Yeah, but there's a lot you
And
can do with a gallon of water.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
is a lot what you could do with a gallon, but it was just like at first sight, it's like, well, what are you gonna do with a gallon of water? Just splash it on the enemy? Like, no, 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 no. See, we're gonna create that water in your lungs.
Huh. Exactly.
Yeah.
You literally make somebody drown with like a
Yeah.
really basic spell. I mean, Dungeons and Dragons 3.5 has some crazy stuff you can do, and let's not even talk about Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, which I've never played, but I've read the rulebook. And let me just tell you that the rogue basically rolled like a different size die for like every skill he had. Pretty nuts.
Oh,
Like,
jeez.
Advanced Dungeons and Dragons was pretty crazy, and again, I've never played it, so I can't tell you how it was run, but like my brain is like I can imagine how like insane this was.
This isn't just Dungeons and Dragons; it's Advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, they created fourth edition, and fourth edition, for those that are not familiar, basically went like all in on combat. The critics, which I think this is fair, basically kind of like it gave like a video gamey feel, and when you think about it, it's like, well, here's the reason why. So powers were split between at-will powers, which are green, encounter powers, which are red, daily powers, which are gray, and then among the classes. And then you would have like item powers and that sort of thing. There'd be limitations. I don't want to go like all in on the rules, but then like for your character, you would have like literally like video game slots. Like you have a head, a neck, a chest, arms, hands, legs, feet, waist. So it was literally like customizing your character. And where fourth edition screwed up, and I say this as a fan, is they started the base health too high. In most of our games, the level 1 character won't have less than 20 hit points, which I'm sure anyone who's played Dungeons and Dragons is like, that's pretty insane.
Then that's not even, that's a squishy.
Yeah, that's the squishy. Whereas like you could peak if you like really went like all in at like almost 40 hit points.
I think I had like 36, right?
Yeah.
Rasa.
Ratseth, who was a Dragonborn Paladin, started with 36 hit points level 1. And that's pretty crazy. And that was an issue all across 4th edition. The monsters were like that. They screwed up on their skill checks. That was another thing that they had to fix later. But basically it was like, so the issue with 4th edition is combat takes a very, very long time. But all the classes basically have the same abilities, unless you're playing human, which is another thing. But a level 1 character starts with 2 at-will powers. You start with 1 encounter power and 1 daily power. And all the classes are like that, period, across them all. So you have an evenly divided abilities where, like, in 3.5, wizards have all these awesome spells. Fighters don't have any.
Fighters punch people.
Fighters just punch people. Yeah. Clerics heal. Another big change they made that I really like about 4th edition is that in combat, you have 3 actions in total plus an action point. Well, again, I don't want to go in detail, but the important thing is you had a standard action, which is basically like any of your powers are a standard action. A move action, you can move. Huzzah. And then a minor action. But the single most important change they made for me was that they basically made all healing in the game, with the exception of Second Wind, a minor action. So if you're playing a cleric in 3.5 and even in 5th edition, what you will have to do is if you want to heal somebody, that basically takes your turn.
Mm-hmm.
And that sucks. There's nothing worse than being in combat and having to spend your turn healing somebody. It sucks. And I know that's your role, but like every party needs a cleric or a healer. So someone's going to get stuck in that role. And guess who usually got stuck in that role? This guy. So...
Hey, that's me. I'm usually the healer. It wasn't until your games that I stopped being the healer.
Yeah. That is true. But, yeah, so, that was kind of like one of the big changes. And 4th edition made a lot of other changes, but 4th edition was not very well received. As I mentioned at the start of the podcast, it was pretty much the lowest selling Dungeons & Dragons version, I think, ever. I think even the original Dungeons & Dragons outsold it, and that was at the height of like, oh, you're a demon and practicing satanic rituals if you're playing Dungeons & Dragons.
That's saying something.
It's D&D!
Yeah, there we go. A little Stephen Lynch there. So what I honestly credit 4th edition for is, and I think the reason why, is they changed too much too quickly from third edition to fourth edition, and essentially what they ended up doing was they kind of like built it back up from square one, and there were a lot of changes compared to class balance and stuff like that. Up Tanner,
Oh,
no,
wow, Tanner has appeared.
yep. So for those listening, I have a giant 135-pound Labrador Retriever. His name is Tanner. He's a mainstay on my Twitch channel, so if you ever stop by, you'll probably see him every now and then. But he has decided to grace us with his presence. So apologies if we seem a little distracted, but he is licking and he is not to be denied.
Feel his grace.
Yes. But so when fourth edition, so there's a really funny line in the fourth edition handbook where they say this is going to define Dungeons and Dragons for the next decade. It's funny because fourth edition didn't even make it 6 years. D&D Next, I believe, started development, I want to say, in like 2012 or 2013.
Ode to humanity.
Fourth edition debuted in like 2008. So, fourth edition, not very well received at the time. I think since then, it has gathered a bit more of a positive reputation. But a lot of people basically say, well, fourth edition, is the worst edition of Dungeons & Dragons. And I wholeheartedly disagree with that. Fourth edition was the first edition to make the fighter viable. A tradition, thankfully, the fifth edition continued. It made the martial classes actually feel really good to play. It introduced skill challenges, so it kind of took that first step into kind of stepping away from combat, even though I will acknowledge fourth edition, its strength is in combat. Tanner, knock it off, kiddo. What are you doing?
So, in a way, it's kind of like, was it Windows Vista?
Sort of. It's something that was viewed as a step backwards at the time and has since been viewed in a bit more of a positive light. So Vista, I don't really think is viewed that positively.
Well, yeah, but the thing about Vista is, as much as it's not viewed positively, some of the feature set is the reason why we have a lot of what we have today.
Yes. So
it was a learning experience for sure.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Windows Vista was good. I'm just saying that it gave us a lot.
It did. And, I think so in that way it's fair, but like I do feel that a lot of fourth edition has now one of the most common things I see like in the D&D Next like subreddit is every like couple months someone who is a diehard fifth edition player will reinvent fourth edition. They will come up with ways that fourth edition already came up with, like for example even distribution of skills. If you're wondering kind of like how they handled like wizards having extra spells, all wizards in Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition got an extra daily ability. But the thing is you had to prepare one, so you could only use one per day. But you had the option of choosing more to prepare. So you still had like an array of spells you could choose from, but you could only select one to use. Now the issue is like in 5th edition in many ways was, in my opinion, took several important steps backwards. That's not to say that I hate 5th edition, I don't. But the big thing for me was classes are unbalanced again, although I've heard they're better than they were in 3.5, but it still feels a lot worse to play like a martial character than it does to play a spellcaster, particularly as you level up. I'm not a big fan of spell slots. For those who are not familiar with 5th edition, the way they handle spells is that each class basically is now a spellcaster, including the martial ones, and you get a certain number of spell slots based on your class.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically the number of spell slots you have, unless you have cantrips, you only have that many spells until you have a long rest or whatever your class specifies. I'm not a big fan of that. I understand why they did it. It's not something that I hate, but it's an interesting design choice, I think, for sure. And of course, making every class a spellcaster, but now you have this like really big gap because like a wizard gets like 3 times as many spells as like a fighter does, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a big like disadvantage in like what cool stuff you can do.
Yeah.
And I've heard that they've added more stuff to help make the fighter better, but I'm just saying on principle, they did bring back the class imbalance. Healing, once again, takes a standard action, so it's basically like if you're playing the healer, you have to spend your turn, and someone needs healing, you have to spend your turn healing them instead of doing something. Whereas in 4th edition, you could heal somebody and try to bop the baddie if you wanted to, which is pretty cool. And, yeah, but the big thing, so that 5th edition built on for 4th edition, is their movement. In 4th edition, you can't split your movement.
Mm-hmm.
You can't move and then attack and then move and then continue the rest of your movement. Because you only have one move action. In 5th edition, they fixed that. So that was a big plus for me. As I've also mentioned, because I'm not hating on 5th edition by any stretch, 5th edition also made the game a lot simpler. 4th edition really simplified a lot of like the skills and the bonuses, but there's still a shit ton of them.
Yeah.
Like, there's still a lot of them. You have -5s, -2s, minus proficiency, which could be +3s or +1s or +2s. Then you could have +2s or +5s, or you have total cover, you have partial cover. There's a lot of that, right? 5th edition, pretty much, for the most part, simplifies it pretty greatly. You either have advantage or you have disadvantage. That's it. And for those that don't know, an advantage and disadvantage, you both roll 2d20s instead of 1. An advantage, you take the higher of the 2 rolls. Disadvantage, you take the lower of the 2 rolls. That's it. Really easy. Really easy to grasp.
Yeah.
No bonuses, not a whole lot of crazy bonuses you got to take care of. 5th edition went a long way in simplifying Dungeons and Dragons, and I say that in the best way possible because that's why it's so successful.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So for 5th edition, again, I'm not here to like talk edition wars. I'm just here to state why I like 4th edition. The biggest issue I have with 5th edition is it feels like it's a role-playing game that is trying to do too much. And it's not doing any one of those things particularly well.
Sounds like Spider-Man 3 and The Dark Knight. Or not The Dark Knight.
Batman v Superman.
Batman v Superman, X-Men, X3.
No, I think the third Batman movie.
Dark Knight Rises.
The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, just trying to do too much. And that's kind of my critique, is that Dungeons and Dragons has never really been great at rewarding role-playing. Inspiration is something that was introduced in 5th edition, which at the DM's discretion, you can grant someone inspiration, and basically they can use that to gain advantage. It's like an action point in 4th edition. But the problem is you can only have 1 inspiration. And you can't get more than that.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so you do something incredible, and then you do something incredible again. I can't reward my player anymore. And then combat, like I said, it was a step backwards towards 3rd edition. Class balance was also a step backwards, in my opinion. But with that being said, though, like, there's a reason 5th edition is now the best-selling version of Dungeons & Dragons in history. And it's because it's simple, it works, and it's still Dungeons & Dragons at its core. It's still a glorified combat simulator.
Filthy casuals. Me.
Yeah.
I'm a filthy casual.
Hey, nothing wrong with that, you know?
I'm that person. Yeah, no, like I said, I didn't really get too much into it until I played in your games. But definitely I could see myself playing a more simpler version of it.
Yeah, I think you would really like 5th edition. I really do. And, you know, I say that again as someone who likes 4th edition more than 5th, but 5th edition is
theatrics,
solid.
man.
Yeah.
Theatrics.
Since you like character building, Samurai, I recommend the Powered by Apocalypse games.
Okay.
Powered by Apocalypse is the game I recommend for role players. Don't get me wrong, it's solid, but unlike D&D, it's not really like a glorified combat simulator. They actually have like rules and setup to try and encourage role playing.
Oh, okay.
So I highly recommend Powered by Apocalypse as another system, and that's why I kind of dunk on 5th edition a little bit, is because I'm like, look, if I wanted to play a role-playing game, I would play the Powered by Apocalypse series, and there's tons of them. There's all sorts of settings that you can participate in, and they're all great. Well, not all of them, but the ones I played are all great. You know, but that's what I'm saying is, like, with Dungeons and Dragons, it's a glorified combat simulator. That's I think the the main point I'm trying to make, and that there are just other systems out there, other tabletop RPGs. We probably won't go into as much detail because neither Shoshima nor Samurai have really played any of them before.
Nope.
But just take my word for it. There's a lot of other systems out there that Fate. I said the Fate system, but Fate is actually not the same thing. Fate is another RPG system. Powered by Apocalypse is a different one. And there's just a lot of stuff that do the things that Dungeons and Dragons is a little weak at better. But of course, they're not as good as combat as Dungeons and Dragons is. They don't give you that feeling of like, oh, I am like, doing this awesome, coup de grace on like goblins or whatever that have kidnapped the princess, whatever your typical fantasy story is. But anyway, I've been talking a lot. I think I've pretty much like dominated this podcast so far. So like, let's talk about your guys' experiences. So if you haven't gathered, I'm usually the DM. I don't play a lot.
No, usually you are.
No, well, I've played in a couple other games outside of with you guys, but with you guys, I'm always the DM.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's what I meant.
But typically speaking, I DM, and for these guys, I always DM. So let's turn to you guys, Shoshima. What has kind of been your favorite part of playing? And this is not for the record talking about what I do well. This is what you like about Dungeons and Dragons and your experiences, your characters, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good way to get multiple people together, rather than your regular game night with a board game. You can, and well, now with these current times, we can do it online pretty easy compared to board games. But it's just I like the role playing. That one game where I hurt my character's back because I did everything, and my whole party couldn't do shit.
Yeah.
Stuff like that I find more enjoyable than just the glorified combat simulator.
For context, I had Shoshima and the rest of the party. They had to find clues to basically clear their name. They were accused of a crime they did not commit, and they had to go out and basically
do that shit.
Be creative within the city and clear their names. And literally, Shoshima got like,
I think 5 out of 6.
Yeah, 5 out of the 6 successes.
We got 7 successes in total, but we only needed 6 to pass.
Yeah. So, his character got 5 of them.
I put in some work.
Yeah, he did. So, and you've played what? You've played a couple different characters with me. Raseth is probably your longest one.
Yeah, I played Raseth. I did make Rock.
Yep.
And
that was actually with Samurai. That was the game with Samurai.
Yeah, that was.
That was the one we tried to do there, and then we did. I made Zamakos, which is our current one that we've been trying to do.
Yeah.
I blame my work and our poor scheduling for that.
I mean, in fairness, I've literally just got off 3 weeks of like dental hell. So.
Yeah, between that and my work's been ridiculous, so Sunday I actually get to spend time with family, but that's a whole separate aside.
Yeah.
Those are our 3 ongoing. I did make for the stream. I made 2 different characters. So I've been trying to do different characters because I haven't played too much. So I'm trying to see what I like.
Yeah.
I for my first character I picked the big old Tinky Boy.
Yeah, he's playing a Raseth is a Dragonborn paladin who worships Kord, the god of battle. So
yes.
Raseth is quite literally a human tank. As I mentioned, he started with like 36 hit points at level 1. Where, for those that aren't familiar, in 5th edition, the one shot we did on stream,
our tank had 12.
Our tank had 12. So like 1/3 of Raseth's hit points.
3 times more.
Yeah. And then Zamakos is a warlock, right?
Tiefling warlock. Yes.
And then Rock was a seeker.
Yes, a human seeker.
Human seeker, yeah. So he's played a couple of different roles. Out of those 3, which one has been your favorite so far?
I'd have to say probably Raseth and then Zamakos. I mean, it also could just be I have more experience, with Raseth.
Yeah.
Because I played that one the most, and then Zamakos the second.
Yeah.
Most. But yeah, it's just really fun, kind of like you build your character and then interacting with other people. I know in the campaign with Raseth, I've done a lot more. Like once Brandon came in with not this Brandon.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of his name. Yeah, Atticus. Yeah.
Yeah, with Atticus, we've kind of have like an interesting relationship we bounce back and forth with.
It is very much a lot like our relationship actually. just back and forth like shit talking each other.
Yeah, because I'm this giant dragonborn, and then he's a little dwarf.
Yeah, he's like a 4 foot tall dwarf druid, and Raseth is like a 7 foot tall like dragonborn warrior of Cord. So they're pretty opposite yet very similar at the same time.
Exactly. So I think just the role playing and the camaraderie is what I like the most. And yeah, just I guess because thinking about it, just the more experience I have, I guess the more I gravitate towards that character.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing, man. Samurai, how about you? I know we haven't played nearly as long. Our stuff keeps getting interrupted due to real life things, but
yeah.
What's your experience been? Like, what characters have you played, and what do you enjoy?
Oh man, so it's funny because my favorite part about it, honestly, is just the character creation part of it, and then testing to see what works, and role playing with other people. It's weird to say when I know most of the things is like, oh, combat, but I just like the interaction of my character with this world that has been created. Like, how can I affect the story?
Mm-hmm.
I'm very much so like I try to add in, that interest. Like, what can I say in character? Like, I will act out my character as well. And it was like, what can I say in character to get other people to talk? I like the social aspect of that.
Yeah, I think that's something you both have in common. Is so for those that don't know, there are many different types of players who play role playing games. There are rules experts, there are social butterflies, there are combat hounds.
Well, I feel Haseo is, he likes those big numbers.
He does. So Haseo traditionally plays like strikers and damage dealers, and he's not really big in role playing.
Mm-hmm.
He's gotten a lot better. Don't get me wrong. Like, this is not a dunk on Haseo podcast. Not yet, anyway.
Oh, it will get there.
We'll get there someday. But we'll bring him in when we do that, so he can at least try to defend himself.
Keyword is try.
Try, yeah. But Haseo is not somebody who is very great at role playing. In fact, most of his characters have been very quiet and very non-interactive.
But I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, not at all.
No.
Like, he's just a different style of player. Like, again, I want to be very clear. We're not criticizing this playstyle, but he likes combat. He likes getting in there and rolling the numbers and there's nothing more satisfying than when he's playing his elf archer, Sura.
His elfy elf.
And he like nat 20s and just deals like 50 damage and one-shots the enemy, which he's done 3 times in my campaign. And yes, I'm still salty about that, Haseo.
Yeah, but who's counting? I mean, honestly.
No, but I mean, again, that's the way the dice roll, and honestly, with the way you guys roll in general, it's glad somebody can roll those nat 20s.
Oh, for real.
Yeah, so, but,
honestly, Haseo's half the reason I took that skill just to do some big boy damage with Raseth.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Haseo is traditionally the guy who, again, I may have just, like, kind of, like, gotten a little heated, but the reality is that as a player, he has probably foiled most of my, like, grand evil DM plans more than anybody else, and half the time he doesn't even mean to. I want to share this story, and Shoshima, you probably remember this, but we had a boss fight, and the idea was that it was actually, like, kind of a little bit of, like, subterfuge on my part, where the main boss, quote-unquote, wasn't actually the boss. And Haseo just decided randomly, like, against all logic and against all of his teammates, I'm going to shoot the inconspicuous person over here. And he one-shot him. Like, he literally one-shot him. Won the entire fight in one shot. Because that inconspicuous person was mind-controlling all the enemies.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
It turned what should have been like an amazing final slaughter, a final fight, into a one-sided slaughter. and in favor of the party, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what Hiseo does. He tends to roll like crap a lot of the times, but man, when he crits,
Oh, he crits good.
he crits good. So yeah, yeah, and like I wish I could tell you guys about like my favorite characters, but I literally haven't played Dungeons and Dragons as a player, aside from like one shot that didn't go very well, in about 12 years.
Huh.
The last time I got to play as a Dungeons and Dragons character and not an NPC, because as a DM you basically play like every character, right?
Yeah.
But as a PC, I haven't played in, aside from that like one shot where I literally fell to the bottom of a swamp and wasn't able to do anything except climb out of it.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Aside from that, I have not actually gotten to play as a PC in 12 years since college.
Yeah, you were pretty salty about that, but we all were.
Yeah, it was. That's another story. But long story short is the person who was trying to run the game was their first time, and they tried to emulate Critical Role a bit too much.
They were enthusiastic at least.
Yeah,
they tried.
It was a good effort. It just, there were some mistakes that were made, and
yeah.
I'll take responsibility as the one who should have helped him out more, but I didn't. So anyway, yeah, so it's like I legitimately, the only role-playing game I played the Star Wars role-playing game, which was.
Then let me. Can I ask you a question then?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, from what you remember, what exactly was like a favorite moment of yours, as a player?
So I actually don't really have one, because as I mentioned in 3.5, I like to play the Ranger class. And the Ranger class was very hit or miss. In those 2 sessions I played with you and Mike, I never hit anything. I missed every roll.
Well, I mean, that's a memorable moment.
So
not being able to hit shit.
So my most memorable moment is when you made your entrance. You missed, but it was the most memorable moment. And then after that, I don't really have like a lot in Dungeons and Dragons, because like we played some one shots, but they were fairly run in the mill. And like it was a one shot. I don't even remember the names of the characters. I remember the character I made, but I remember the class, but I don't remember actually getting to play.
That's okay. I don't remember any of my characters' names. I just remember what they were, what they did, and what their powers were.
Yeah, the one I'm remembering is the monk who wielded the paddle.
Bludgeoning weapon.
Yeah, it was a bludgeoning weapon, so it worked.
Yep.
But no, I think my probably most memorable moment as a player actually came in the Star Wars game that I ran with Fish Hat, actually. Fish Hat was the DM for that.
Oh, okay.
And so I just want to be clear. The issue with the Star Wars, the foundation of the Star Wars The Outer Rim role-playing game is you are basically playing Han Solo. You are rogues outside of like the Empire. You can be aligned with the Empire or the Rebellion, but the Outer Rim doesn't really encourage that. So you're talking like smugglers, thieves, basically people acting out of their own self-interest, not necessarily heroes, which is a big flaw if you don't know how to play it right.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, Fish Hat, as a brand new DM, didn't really know how to react with 3 players who had way more experience than he did in the role-playing section.
Mm-hmm.
So the scenario was we got hired by the Hutts, the Hutt clan of Star Wars, to go to this mining facility and collect any money that was there. Well, what happened is we literally just got the money and left. And we missed half of the story because it turned out like the robots had like the droids rather had rebelled against the miners and they were imprisoned. And what you were supposed to do in this scenario is go through and rescue the miners, but the 3 of us were like, well, we've got a thief, which was me. We have a smuggler, and we have a rogue pilot who's a defector for the Empire. We're not going to pull heroics.
Yeah.
So that's when you send bounty hunters.
Yeah. Well, so that was also a funny story, but like that's again like that's what an experienced DM would do, right? But like you're trying to like manage all this stuff, and as a DM, it's not necessarily that easy to think about it at the moment. After we finished, Fish Hat was like, "Oh, I could have done this."
Yeah, hindsight's always 2020.
But like literally, what happened was we stumbled upon the droid. We had like one mission of combat where I practically missed every shot. There's a recurring theme here, by the way. As a PC, Shenzo rolls like shit. So
I can't hit shit.
It's okay.
Yeah.
So did I.
Yeah.
So did I.
But we accidentally stumbled on this droid that was the keeper of the facility, and they had the key to the vault. So we literally just got in the vault, stole everything, kept 10% for ourselves in addition to our reward because we're all ne'er-do-wells.
Yeah.
And then we turned it in, and that was it. So it was fun. Don't get me wrong. I would 10 out of 10 do it again. But that's kind of unfortunately where my experience is just that I think out of all the people I play with, I'm the most experienced DM, and as a result, I usually get called to do it, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But that also means that I don't traditionally get to play. And,
Yeah.
that's unfortunate, but this is not a woe was me moment. I love DMing. I love world building. Again, like I talked about at the beginning, what attracted me to GURPS was infinite worlds, infinite possibilities. When you have a multiverse like that, that's what captured my imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And I have characters that both of you know that I have literally been working on since I was 14 that still show up in random locations in the game. So, overall, that's kind of been my experience. It's I don't get to play as often, but it's better than not playing at all. And DMing is a lot of fun because I get to create a whole bunch of NPCs to fuck with you guys. So, I can't complain too much about that.
One day I will run a Monster Hunter themed D&D session.
Oh boy, that should be fun.
Oh, hey, yo. That sounds good.
All of a sudden I'm on your radar.
Somewhere, Professor Akihige's ears just perked up in interest. But yeah, so I know this was pretty much a Shenzo-dominated episode. I do apologize for that.
We all knew that coming in.
Yeah, okay, well, as long as you guys are okay with it. But do you guys have any kind of final thoughts that we want to wrap up with? We're kind of approaching the 1 hour mark here, so.
My favorite character was a mage that I created who had nothing but touch spells. Which sounds horrible. And then the last spell that my DM read was Spectral Hand.
Oh no!
Yeah, get fucked. The most destructive spells. Just attach it to the Spectral Hand. Go.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Seems legit, man.
Yeah. But anyway. Go.
We already touched on, I made that one archer that broke everything in GURPS.
Yeah, yes you did. Headshots for days.
Yeah, because I remember, what was it? Like a -5 if you try to attack a second time in a turn.
Yeah.
Unless you were a mastery at the weapon, then it was just a -3.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure I went for 2 or 3 headshots per round of combat.
You did. So the way GURPS works is that you could basically attack as many times as you want as long as you took a penalty, for each subsequent attack type thing, unless you created advantages or disadvantages that would allow you to do that.
Yeah. Well, and then there was aiming for the head was already a -5.
Yeah, it was a -5, and then.
And then then there was the -5, but I was a master, so it was only a -3 to do it a second time.
Yeah, so it was
so
a net of a
-8. Yeah. And I just did it 2 or 3 times. I'm I'll just keep firing arrows till they're dead.
Yeah, and basically I think he got down to a -12 before he started missing. It was pretty crazy.
Because the only penalty was I missed.
Yeah. That was it. He was oh yeah, you just missed your shot. Oh darn.
I'm going to kill you until you are dead.
Yeah, pretty much. And then I'll never forget the one time. I believe you were the GM, right, when we were playing GURPS, and I summoned myself into my own ass.
You did, yes. Yeah. So long story short is GURPS again allows for a lot of flexibility, and he basically decided Naruto was big at the time, and he was playing a class that had magic, and one of those magics was summoning. So he rolls to try and summon something,
Mm-hmm.
and he critically fails,
Yes.
which in GURPS is 3 ones on your 6-sided die, which is
Mhm.
really hard to do. And
I did it.
he did it, so I had to come up with something off the fly, and he literally pushed himself into a different dimension. Essentially, that was his own ass. Because that's what we'd been joking about. It's like, what are you gonna do? Summon something out of your ass? And then he did it, and he disappeared off the battlefield and was removed from combat because he summoned himself into a different dimension, which we nicknamed his own ass.
Yep.
So yeah, that's the short version of what happened.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that was in Garwood's classroom
Yes.
when
oh
that
my
happened.
gosh. So much shenanigans there.
Yeah, he did not give a fuck.
No. Even in class.
No, he really didn't. But yeah, so that's like I said, I've kind of already made my comments on it. You know, I think I've talked enough this episode. So I think we'll wrap up here. Shoshima, where can we find you?
You can find me at Zachary ZACKERY 1016
And that's on
Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter.
And that's pretty much it.
Okay. And Samurai, how about you?
Then you can find me on Twitter at SamuraiNoodlez. That's noodles with a Z, no space,
All one word. Got it.
all one word.
And of course, you can find me Actions of the Lost on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that fun stuff. Actually, I don't think I have a Facebook account. I don't know why I said that. Anyway, pretty much anywhere except Facebook. So Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, and of course Twitter. So
Stalk
thank you.
me.
Right. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you guys next week.
Okay, bye.
Bye bye.